Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another fantastic episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette, and joining me today is Leticia Francis. How are you?
I'm great, Bernadette. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you for dropping by. Wow, thank you for coming. So, Leticia, what is your story? How have you been changing the world, and how have you been healing?
Yeah, so I call myself the survival mode disruptor, and I'll probably start from the end and then go to the beginning just so it makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
I Yeah, I call myself the Survival Mode Disruptor. I recently wrote a memoir that I had not published, and I haven't published yet. And in writing that memoir, there was this reconciliation that I had been in survival mode for more than 2 decades. And survival mode for me began when I was 7 years old. I asked my father why he and my mother had gotten a divorce. They divorced when I was very young. My mom was getting ready to get remarried, and my father had been remarried for several years. And he told me that my birth was the reason him and my mother were no longer together. And as a child processing that information, I really didn't know how to take it all in. But what I heard was my existence is the reason why the most important relationship in my life did not last. And as a result of that, I developed a lot of negative feelings towards my mom. And I had a lot of questions for my father, which went unanswered. That left me in a position where I felt like I was being raised between two family units. My mom getting remarried, she later started her own family with her husband, my father and his wife and their family, and I was somewhere in between. And I was a person that wanted attention, I wanted loved, I wanted to be seen and accepted for who I was. Shortly after learning about my parents' divorce, I was molested by a neighbor. And while I knew that what was happening was wrong, the battle that I had with myself is, well, do I tell somebody? Because if I tell somebody, then the attention that I'm getting will stop. Because, as I said, I just wanted to be seen and accepted for who I was. And as a result of being exposed to sex quite early, I kind of sought that kind of attention. By the time I was 12, I was very mature. I looked like I was probably in my 20s, at that age. My body stature and even my maturity level had always been around older people. So I lost my virginity at 12 as a result of rape. I didn't process it as rape at that time. But again, it was this duality of I know I said no. However, I'm being seen. I had several sexual relationships with men that were significantly older than me, until I was introduced to someone when I was 14 who was 29 years old, and he became my boyfriend. Um, that relationship allowed me to escape my home life in a sense. I didn't have a lot of controls. My mom was very focused on her younger children. So I was able to spend a lot of time with this man, um, often to 10 or 11 o'clock at night on a school day, or I would go to school on a Friday and not come back to my house until Sunday evening. And there was very little questioning that was being had. However, I grew up on a very small island of Bermuda, and it wasn't long before my mom knew that I was dealing with this older man. She did a like a background report on him and learned that all of his relationships ended as a result of restraining order. And she tried to warn me that he seems like a very dangerous man. Because my relationship with my mother at that time was very strained, I thought that she was trying to stop me from being happy, right? Like as a teenager trying to find my own space in the world, haven't really had the attention, the nurturing that I've needed. I'm not saying it wasn't offered, but it wasn't what I needed at the time. And then having to navigate relationships with step parents who made it very clear that they wanted nothing to do with me left me in a space of wanting to escape my home life. Um, so yeah, when she approached me about the information she had about this man, I didn't take it seriously. The first time he put his hands on me, I was 15 years old. He attempted to choke me out because he saw me speaking to someone, another man, and he was jealous. I believe the only reason why I survived that attack is because someone pulled him off of me. And I knew then, okay, this man's put his hands on me. This is not where I need to be. So I packed everything that I had at his house into a trash bag and I left. But now I'm left not having an escape and having to deal with my home life and not having anywhere to go to forget about what I'm dealing with. And one night, my mother's husband and I got into an argument, and I made a statement that I should just kill myself. And he said, "Oh, you're gonna kill yourself?" Called my mama into the kitchen. He called my sisters into the kitchen, and they were young, like maybe 4 and 5, and said, "Oh, she's gonna kill herself. Let's watch."
Ooh.
And I attempted suicide in front of my entire mother's side of the family, and no one stopped me. But my mom took me to the hospital, to get medical assistance. And as a result of that suicide attempt, I was put under psychiatric care. There was like this family meeting where I was given the opportunity to express why I felt like taking my life was my only answer. And in that meeting, my father rejected anything that I had to say. He got up and walked out, and that was the last time I spoke to him for many years. As a result of the suicide attempts, the pressure from my family became pretty intense, and I ended up back in the relationship with the man that had choked me out because I was looking for that escape. Um, I married him when I was 19, and after the marriage, the abuse that I had been experiencing continuously kind of ramped up. He made it clear that he thought I was his possession, and he kept me silent in a sense because at that during that time I was working for law enforcement, but very scared to expose what was going on in my household because, now I'm working behind the scenes and I can actually see how people respond to these type of events, right? Like
Mm.
they talked about it, they mocked people, they laughed about it, and I really didn't want my business being spread amongst my coworkers. So I kept silent. And that eventually led me to a place where I wanted a way out of the marriage. So fast forward a couple of years, and I'm in a situation where one day I can't find my cell phone, and I call my cell phone when I get home, and my husband answers the phone. And I knew in that moment that if he had answered my phone, he's probably going through my text messages. And I was nervous. And he said to me, I'll deal with you when you get home, when I get home. And I just knew after years of abuse that that was something that was going to be quite dangerous for me. But as I sat and waited, one of my friends called my landline, and she, like many of my friends, was calling to seek advice. I had kept a great picture. I had painted a great picture for my friends as far as my relationship. Many of them didn't know that what I was dealing with behind closed doors. And this day, in order to encourage my friend, I said to her, I'm going to read you a piece of this book that I'm reading. So I picked up this book called Until Today by 𝒈𝒈𝒁𝒁, and I read the passage. The passage was about interpersonal relationships and how sometimes we end up in relationships that don't work. And that's because people are meant to be in our life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And often we're trying to keep the temporary people close when they've served their purpose. And that's why the relationships don't work. And it was like the penny dropped for me. It was like this aha moment. I needed to hear that in that moment. And it's almost coincidental that it happened that night because that night my husband came home and he told me, "Oh, you think you're gonna leave? You're not leaving me. The only way you're gonna leave is in a body bag." And when he said that, I knew, like after years of abuse, I knew that I was in extreme danger. And I ran to the landline and I called my mom and I said, "Look, you have to come pick me up right now." And as I'm saying that, he pulled the landline out of the wall. So I didn't even know she heard me. I didn't know anything. He then proceeded to barricade us in our bedroom. We were living with somebody at the time. And that's when I realized he had a knife. And whenever I speak about this, I always say it was an out of body experience. Like I felt like I was looking down on myself, fighting,
Mm,
literally fighting for my life.
mm,
In the commotion, the person that we were living with managed to get in the bedroom and I was able to run out. And my husband followed behind me, still attempting to stab me. I didn't recognize at that point that I had been stabbed. Like the adrenaline was just so high. But I was then kicked out of the home because the person we were living with didn't want the police to be called. And in that chaos, my mom pulls up. And that is when I recognized that I actually had been stabbed by my husband. So I managed to get out of the house. I managed to get to my mother's house. I somehow convinced her not to take me to the hospital because I did not want to go to the hospital. I knew if I went to the hospital, the police would be called immediately. So I went to her house trying to sort things out, and she came to me and she said, I don't know what you're gonna do, but like you can't stay here." Like that was literally the lowest point of my life. My husband had just stabbed me, and my mom was telling me that I couldn't stay in her house. And I ended up in a woman's shelter, to seek refuge. And I stayed there for several months as I rebuilt my life. I had to get a restraining order. I had to file for divorce, and then get an apartment. And I mean, that wasn't easy. I was literally stalked by this man for almost 2 years after that. But I managed to get a divorce and I eventually decided that I was going to go to Atlanta and go to school. So I go to Atlanta, I go to school. And I'm sorry if this is getting a bit long, but
Oh
I
no, it's all
okay.
good. Go ahead. Yeah.
I get to Atlanta to go to school. I end up getting a full scholarship, and things were looking pretty good for me. Things were looking up. I had moved beyond, the divorce and the abuse. And then I met this man. And I will say this as someone who comes from a very small island, as I said, Bermuda's like 21 square miles. If I ever met a man in Bermuda, I can call someone and ask, "Do you know this person?" and get a whole rundown of the family history. I mean, I might even find out he might be my cousin. But I was actually terrified of dating in the States because I knew that there was so many instances of man having families in different states and living completely different lives. And I had no way of doing a background check on somebody that I had just met, So I meet this guy and everything just happened very quickly. Within 6 months, 6 weeks, we were living together, which sounds crazy. But once I moved in, I found out that he had a cocaine addiction, and it was pretty severe. He managed to drain me of all of my extra money that I had was getting as a result of the full scholarships and other scholarships that I had. Um, And because was so naive to addiction at the time, I actually thought I was helping him, but I realized it was all manipulation. That relationship lasted about 3 years, and it only ended as a result of finding out that he was married to someone else. Um, and I
Mm.
had to again kind of piece my life back together after this relationship that literally brought me to my knees emotionally. Um, I eventually graduated and I moved back to Bermuda. And I started focusing on my career, which was in commercial insurance. And things were going well. I was focusing on my career. I was focusing on my healing. At that time, 𝒈𝒊𝒏𝒅 had released the book Peace from Broken Pieces that I like literally spent weeks and months rereading and rereading because there was so much of her story that resonated with me. And then I met this man. And once again, it was like I was swept off my feet. And when I talk about this relationship, I kind of talk about it as if it was like a Hallmark movie. Like for the first year, like I had no complaints. If there was no arguments, it was wow, like finally I'm here. Like finally I've met this person that is like pouring into me instead of me pouring into them and them being sucked dry. And then someone in his family passed away unexpectedly, and he relapsed on crack cocaine. And because of my previous relationship, I was able to see the change in him. I knew what addiction looked like. And I called him out on it. I was like, listen, I know you're using, like, it's clear that you're using it. I am not going to tolerate this. And he begged me, please give me another chance. Like, I promise I will get cleaned up. But at that point, he had been stealing from his job for a significant period of time. He worked in a high-end restaurant slash grocery store, and he had stolen so much that they had installed cameras in the coolers and freezers to understand what was going on with their produce. And one day, shortly after he begged me to give him another chance, I got a call from him asking me to go to his job and pick up something for him, pick up a bag. It's something I had done before, right? Like he was a chef. He used to bring home meats so that he can cater parties and stuff. So I've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go to his job, I pick up this bag, and then I'm surrounded by the security at his job, and they're like, "You have stolen goods." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Take the bag," because I like literally don't know what you're talking about. So he was arrested, he lost his job, and I thought nothing else of it. Until a couple of weeks later, I got a call from receptionist at my job saying, "Leticia, the police are here to see you."
Oh.
And I was arrested on my corporate job for stealing meats or receiving stolen goods. I was taken to the police station. I was booked in. I was given my one call, and I called my mama. And I was like, "Look, I need you to call a lawyer for me.
Yeah.
I need you to help me sort this out because they've arrested me because of what my boyfriend did." So she was like, "Okay." A couple of minutes later, sergeant came to my cell and said, "Someone's here to see you." So I'm thinking it's the lawyer, you know. She listened. She did what I asked.
Yeah.
And I go into this room and there was my mother. And she asked me one question. She asked me, "Why do you love everyone else more than you love yourself?" And the only way I can describe that question was like it was a Mike Tyson body blow. She knocked the wind out of me,
Mm.
but I didn't have an answer. Like I was stunned by the question. Um, but that question changed my entire life because I had to go back to my cell and sit in silence and ruminate on the fact that although I was not the reason directly for being in the jail that day, my decisions were. And if I don't start making different decisions, I am going to end up in jail. I'm going to end up in prison, um, or even worse. So after I was released and not charged, um, I sought the help of a coach, and she helped me to see that I had been proudly carrying the victim badge. I was a victim. I was a victim of my circumstances. I was a victim of everybody else's atrocities. And she said to me, "As long as you're a victim, you have no control."
Ooh.
And that kind of woke me up, right? Like, yes, I had been victimized. Absolutely. From the age of 7, I had gone through trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. I'm literally 20 years later, I'm still
Yeah.
being traumatized by my decisions, but she helped me see how much more control that I had in my life that I had actually given myself credit for. She also let me see that until I make a decision to take control over my life, nothing will ever change. So I worked really hard for many months to like learn how to like myself, learn how to trust my decisions, learn how to accept my flaws and my mistakes, and get to know who I was beyond all of the trauma and the pain.
Mm.
And I decided, in an effort to press restart or reset, I
Mhm.
left the island. I left Bermuda and I moved to England and I focused on my career and I did all the things and I became a mother and a wife and
Mm.
all of that. And then after years of climbing the ladder and checking all of societal expectation boxes, I recognized that I still was just existing. I wasn't doing anything with my experience. I wasn't showing up in the world to make impact. And I remembered the impact that that coach made on me. I remembered how much my life changed as a result of her being brutally honest with me. And I end up quitting my 9 to 5 and focusing on doing what I could to make an impact on the world, to change the world. Like I now have 2 daughters and their affirmations every day is I am beautiful, I am loved, I am special, I have purpose, and I'm here to change the world. And I show up every day now trying to make a change. And my change is all focused around trauma and the residual impacts, right? Because like I really didn't understand how my trauma showed up in my life. It showed up as people pleasing, it showed up as promiscuity. It showed up as me being this overachiever trying to appease everyone around me when silently I was dying. I was
Mhm.
crying out for, I was still crying out for attention and to be seen and accepted for who I was.
Mhm.
And once I recognized that, it changed everything for me. So now I'm in this space of trying to give other people awareness of how trauma shows up, how you can step out of survival mode, and how you can take radical control of your life no matter what you've been through.
Mm. Well, that's a wrap. Wow. I don't even know where to start, what to say, because I'm just listening. I'm so drawn to your energy and everything you're sharing. Um, what an incredible, powerful story you have. And
Thank you.
what a powerhouse you are as a woman. I am so honored to meet you. I am so proud of you. I sound like
Thank you.
like a mom figure. I am so freaking proud of you. You
Thank you.
let yourself bleed. You got help and you have scars. Your scars are telling a story, a very powerful one. Stories that most of us are not telling yet, even though it's suffocating us. So thank you
Mhm.
for sharing. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
say me too in the earlier phase of your childhood. It happened to me too. And it happened throughout my life, actually. It's something that I'm still so traumatized by it. I don't even know how to talk about it like you're talking about it. I don't know where to start doing healing at. It's just I'm still in shock mode. At this point, I don't know if it's victim mode because I'm stepping up and I'm opening up slowly. But I'd love to hear how can people get to the place that you are right now, especially if they are suffering and it's suffocating, they're dying inside and they look like they're fine, but they're not.
Mhm. Whenever I talk about survival mode, and that's the place where we end up after trauma, pre-healing,
Mhm.
and healing is a never-ending journey. So, like, you could have already started your healing journey, but you just haven't taken ownership of your space yet, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I talk about exiting survival mode, I'd say it happens in three phases. The first phase is self-awareness. We can't change what we can't see. And I think a lot of us just really had to get honest about where we
Mhm.
are in our lives, right? We have to get honest that we're not moving forward, that we are stagnant, that we want something more, and are willing to change the way that we're showing up in the world so that we can have change in our lives, right? Like, and I think this is
Mhm.
a very important point. Change does not occur until your willingness to stay the same is less than your willingness to change. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we find ourselves in places where we say, I want something different,
Yeah.
but we're not willing to change our patterns, our habits, and our behaviors in order to make that happen.
Mhm.
And then it goes back to ownership, right? Like in order for you to see change in your life, you have to change something in your life. So that
Mhm.
part, self-awareness, getting clear on what needs to change and then start taking action. Second phase, I believe, is reprogramming. We have to challenge the narratives that we hold. Most people don't recognize that we recycle 95% of our thoughts every day. So if in 2020, I'm thinking something and I do nothing to change that thought, in 2025, I'm still thinking that. So reprogramming is challenging your narratives, challenging your beliefs. Often it comes down to challenging the conditioning that you grew up in, right? Challenging the cultural expectations that you have, right? Like I'm going to speak because you and I are both Black women. I know that if I say to you, we have to work twice as hard, you can finish the sentence, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
90% of us have been conditioned to work twice as hard for half as much.
Yeah.
And so reprogramming is going in there and challenging the beliefs, challenging, like I had to challenge the fact that I believed that I was a victim. I had to challenge the fact that I thought that love had to come from outwards or validation had to come from outwards, not inwards, right? And
Mhm.
all of that helped me change the way that I showed up in the world as well. And then the last phase, I believe, is reinvention, being confident enough to be able to define who you are in spite of the trauma, in spite of the ways that you've been victimized, in spite of all of the negative decisions that you've made, the mistakes that you made, you
Mhm.
get to define who you are without any label. You
Yeah.
also get to align yourself with your core values and you get to decide what that is. A lot of people believe that you can go back to the person that you were prior to the trauma, and I'm not one that believes that. I
Mhm.
believe that trauma changes you. And as we know, trauma changes us at a DNA level. And a great analogy to share with that is if you drop black paint in white paint, it doesn't matter how pale that white paint appears to be, it's no longer white, it's gray.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
whenever we go through something, it literally changes us. So saying that we're going back to who we were before, I don't think it's possible. But we do have an opportunity
Mm.
to define who we are going to be tomorrow, who we are going to be in the next hour, who we are going to be in the next minute. We can change our minds as much as we want to, but we just have to anchor into that and just show up as that every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Mic drop. Wow, wow, incredible. What would you say, let's say someone's watching, or many someone's, they're just scared to tell anybody of what they're going through. What are some signs that their friends or family members can look for in them?
I think the best sign is someone who has just shut down. Most of us would say, I'm fine. I'm okay. Everything's great. But you can see differently. And it's not about forcing someone to tell you what's wrong. It's about creating a safe space for when they are ready to open up. So it would be someone saying, I'm fine, and you know that they're not.
Yeah.
Saying something as simple as, I can see that you're not fine, and I will hold space for you when you are ready to tell me what's going on.
Mhm.
Because people just want to be seen.
Yeah.
When they can say, I'm fine, and you just move on with the conversation, they aren't being seen. But it's not
Mhm.
about putting pressure on anybody. It's not about trying to pull their story out of them. It's just consistently showing them that you are a safe space for them to share.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Were there some books or resources that helped you?
Everything 𝒈𝐿𝐷𝒐𝒅𝒂𝒔𝒕 helped me. I am a person. I'm not like I know some people in their healing journey need to be cuddled and they need a soft touch. Soft touches don't work for me. So everything 𝒈𝐿𝐷𝒐𝒅𝒂𝒔𝒕 was like a punch in the face. And it's exactly what I needed, right? Like I needed to be punched with the truth. So if I would say if anybody is going through something incredibly difficult in this moment, even if you are a person that needs a soft touch, start with the value of the valley by Ian Levinson.
Hmm.
This is a beautiful book that teaches you how to anchor into the lesson of the circumstances that you find yourself in rather than on trying to figure out why it's happening to you. Because everything happens for us, not to us. And what's interesting about life is it teaches you lessons so that you can get to the next level of your purpose of being on earth. But if you don't learn the lesson, you will be taught over and over and over. So the reason why I think this book is so significant is it really adequately breaks down how you can, in your darkest moments, anchor into the lesson that you are being taught so that it doesn't seem so dark, so that when you're on the other side, you can celebrate the fact that that circumstance edified you instead of took away
Hmm.
from you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing. I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to have you back to do part two of this because I think there's so much that we both need to dissect. So yeah, can you come back? Uh, yeah,
Absolutely. Like this
yeah.
is a conversation, as you can see, that I can talk about literally for hours. And
No,
it's
I love it.
beyond my story because I'm passionate about seeing people see the light,
Yeah,
not just it at the end of the tunnel, but really experience the warmness of the light all around.
yeah.
And it's a beautiful feeling. And it's just, these are just necessary conversations.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys, this is part one. But before I let you go, Leticia, where can people find you and connect with you?
Sure. So, two great places to find me. Number one is my website, LeticiaReneeFrancis.com. Um, LeticiaReneeFrancis.com. And then also I have a Facebook group called Disrupting Survival Mode. So that is the place that I show up and I share this kind of knowledge um
Yeah,
in hopes to help
yeah,
people
yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Letitia, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for everything that you're doing, for inspiring, empowering, and showing up for survivors. But before I let you go, one last question, which I ask every guest. What is the meaning of life for you?
The meaning of life for me is getting to that place of self-actualization, being able to get through the rubbish and get to that mountaintop, but not only to get there, but to reach back and help someone else.
Mm, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Letitia. We'll be chatting soon to have part two of this incredible episode and other things that we're going to be talking about. You guys are not going to want to miss it. All right. So thank you, Letitia.
Thank you.